Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Crypto News Podcast. It's your host, Matt Zahab. We are buzzing as always. And folks, I'm super pumped to have a recurring guest on the show today. Haven't seen this lad in a hot, 2.75 years. It's almost been 3 years, February of 2022, back when he was the CEO of Fantom. Now he is the CEO of Sonic, which we will get into. Today's guest is Michael Kong, influential thought leader and developer, concentrated on the expansion of blockchain tech. He is currently the CEO and CIO of Sonic Labs. You guys know him from Fantom and FTM. Before Sonic, he served as the CTO of myStake, Digital Currency Holdings, and Liberté Co. He has also been a part of the ETH community since 2013. Wow, what a hot minute that is. Michael, pumped to have you on for round two, my friend. How you doing this lovely morning?
Hey, Matt. Yeah, really appreciate it. I'm going well. And thanks for the invite. Just to correct one thing, you mentioned I've been part of the ETH community since 2013. I think that was before it began. I started to get more into ETH in 2016. But apart from that, yeah, really appreciate your kind words.
You got it. Yeah, that's on me there. I'm just reading the notes. I should definitely double check that. But c'est la vie. You were just out east across the pond, across the big pond in Singapore. Don't know if you did KBW as well. I stayed at home for this one. What was it like? Any good stories? Any really cool events? What was sort of the talk of the town over in East Asia?
Yeah, so I didn't attend KBW this year, but I attended Singapore for Token 2049. I was there for about a week. I just came back a couple of days ago, and it was really, really good. It was just so many people there, such a great community, such a great environment. It was great to meet a lot of people that are involved in the Sonic community and other people who want to join as well and launch the applications when the network goes live, which will be before the end of the year. And so it was just really interesting to meet a lot of people and had a lot of meetings, had public meetings. Obviously, we had our own event in the evening. We had a business developer lunch that a lot of people came to. I think more than 100 builders came there. And wow. A lot of other private meetings as well with interested in private funds and also applications that are looking to deploy on Fantom that on Sonic now that some people might be very aware of in terms of names. In terms of interesting thoughts that I got from there, one interesting thought that was kind of a recurring theme is that some people were saying that it was really good that we're launching before the end of the year because we're launching ahead of many other chains that are looking to launch some point in the future. And I think a lot of developers were encouraged by the fact that we had a much more definitive date that was coming up soon in the next 2 to 3 months as to when exactly we will launch and what exactly we will launch with, which of course is the new L1 Sonic with the latest technology, plus what we call the gateway or the bridge that will make it a lot easier and more secure and cheaper actually to bridge from Ethereum and other chains onto the new Sonic network. And that seemed to give a lot of confidence to builders because it meant that they could plan, okay, I've got 2 to 3 months, this chain is going to be launched with all the new features. I can deploy on the chain. They have a very clear grants and incentives program as well on the BD side. And so that was very encouraging to hear. So that's one really good piece of news that I heard, which I think plays really well into the narrative of Sonic going forward.
I love that. That's such a good point. Every team I've spoke to who has raised a good amount of cake is literally just chilling on the sidelines, waiting, more specifically, I think and feel like for the early November election. And then it's just going to be, if Trump gets in, I feel like it's going to just be an absolute, it's going to be just not a bloodbath, the opposite of a bloodbath. It's going to be a parade, You think that's warranted? Obviously you guys are doing it, in my opinion, the right way, regardless of market conditions. You've been testing for a while, you're going to launch away, which we love to see. But do you think people have a right or at least solid reasoning in regards to delaying until post-election in 2025?
I don't think it's so much people are delaying for post-election. I think it's just that there's a lot of builders that are out there who are right now developing their applications or have recently developed their applications where they're looking for new chains to deploy on, right? They're looking for, ultimately, what is a builder interested in, right? A builder is running a business. They're interested in launching on the chain that they believe will benefit them the most in the short, medium, and the long term, right? And so for us at Sonic, the fact that we're launching pretty soon over the next 2 to 3 months, and we have these incentives and we have this latest technology which people can already test out on the testnet and see the code for themselves and experience it for themselves, is all really like quite a compelling offering for developers out there. So, the fact that we have like a pretty like straightforward roadmap means that developers can be confident that, oh, okay, in 2 to 3 months, I can launch on this chain, I can get these incentives. If the promises are true with regards to what they're claiming in terms of scalability and time to finality, my app is just going to fly on their chain and it's just going to make my life a lot easier. Plus, initiatives such as gas monetization, which is essentially allowing people to earn a percentage of their fees that they generate on the application up to 90%, I think is a very compelling offering as well, because developers can see that and go, okay, I've got another a monetary stream where it's not just like the design of my application and fee generation that makes money. It's also just people using my application that will also generate a new revenue stream for me. And, there are a few applications out there that, have famously like started creating their own chains because they want to capture all of the fee generation or in terms of transactions on their side. Well, with Sonic, you have a very fast, really reliable chain out there where you can earn up to 90% of the transaction fees you generate anyway. That I think is quite compelling for developers. So instead of a developer wanting to or thinking about building their own chain, which requires a lot of work, requires a lot of time and cost as well, that you don't need to worry about that. You just worry about optimizing your application and you get all these benefits. So, the way that I approach our business and the way that the whole team approaches it is always thinking about, okay, who are our customers? There are developers and there are users. What do developers and users want? Everyone acts in their own self-interest. So how do we make our offering very, very compelling for developers to build their applications on the network? And how do we make the offering very, very attractive for users in that, we have great technology, we have incentives for users, we have a whole bunch of great applications on there for users to use. That's how we kind of like approach everything going forward.
I love that. But look, before we get into Sonic and a lot of the nitty gritty, which I can't wait to get into, you got to give us the lowdown on why the rebrand. I know I was not a fly in the wall. I know nothing about this. I loved FTM. I thought it was a great ticker. I liked Fantom as well. I know there were a couple other Fantoms, but no one had the market share that you guys had. No one had the reputability, the branding that you guys had. Michael, walk me through the whole rebrand. Why go from, FTM over to S, from Fantom over to Sonic? Walk me through that whole game plan there.
Yeah, that's a great question. So one reason is because we had planned for a while to potentially launch a new chain. And that was largely for like technical reasons, because there were a lot of like improvements that we made to the underlying technology that we branded it as Sonic, or the Sonic technology. Some of those changes could and have been implemented in the current network, but there are a lot of other changes as well that made it very, very difficult to integrate it with an existing network and a lot easier to deploy on the new network, right? Just to kind of give an analogy, and I won't get into too much detail about it, it's like, trying to change a plane that's already flying versus just building the plane on the ground and launching that. Well, obviously, like the latter is a lot easier than the former. So there were like very good technical reasons why we decided to launch a new chain. And because we decided to launch a new chain, or part of it, we also considered, okay, should we actually like launch a new brand as well, right? Should we rebrand Fantom to now Sonic? And the motivation behind that was several fold, but one of the most important reasons is that, Fantom has been around for a long time, as you mentioned. It got started in early 2018. It launched its chain towards the end of 2019. It's been around for a while. And I think having a new brand is just a good way to kind of like refresh it, especially playing into the narrative of launching the new chain. That this is a fresh launch, that we're doing things a lot better than we've done in the past, that we learn a lot from our mistakes that we made in the past. And that kind of brings me to the second point, which is, the Fantom brand, as you mentioned, it has a lot of good aspects to it. Like obviously in 2021, it took off. It, got really, really popular, especially known as a DeFi chain. However, it also had some, not very good history in the past. I mean, for example, the way that it began in 2018 was a project that originated out of Korea, and the people that worked on that project unfortunately turned out to be, not very like honest people, and they plagiarized our technology, they plagiarized the technical paper, and we had to kind of rebuild it from scratch. And that kind of like left a bad taste in the mind of a lot of people who invested in the project at the time. And everything that I'm saying here has been vindicated by a recent court victory that we had in the Seoul High Court, where they determined that what I was saying is true, that the previous team plagiarized, and that other people, in particular like Andre, came in and basically rebuilt technology into where we are today. And of course, there's a multi-chain situation which is still being worked on and resolved, and just a number of instances like that we kind of want to move on from and kind of like think about the future. The third reason has to do with the naming itself. So Fantom obviously like is Fantom, but phonetically it's Phantom, right? And that caused us a lot of problems because if you're a non-English speaker and you want to translate Fantom, right? You want to translate the content. The translation
Good
doesn't
point.
go to how it's like spelt with the F, right? It goes to how it's spelled with the PH. And so that caused us a lot of problems actually, because a lot of people were confused about, okay, what exactly is Fantom? Because when you put in, the translation, you get the PH, how it phonetically
Which is a
sounds
Solana
and spelled.
wallet.
Yeah, which is the Solana wallet. And that caused us a lot of problems because I've been in several meetings and I've talked to a lot of people who thought that I was from the Solana wallet when in fact, I'm from the Fantom L1 chain. And so I think that naming confusion, which is something that I never realized until much later, is a big problem, especially if you want to reach out to a lot of non-English speaking audiences, which obviously we want to do, because people, non-English speakers are probably translating it and going in the wrong direction and thinking that we're the Fantom wallet when we're actually the Fantom L1. So I think with the new name Sonic, there's no translation issues there. It's a relatively generic name, but I think it also describes, part of our narrative, right? In that, we've built this great technology that is provably very, very fast and provably can handle a large number of transactions, and all the the text is going to be transparent and paper is going to be written, etc. And it really is about speed for us at the technical level. And I think the name Sonic kind of encapsulates that in the meaning of the word itself. So those are the reasons why we decided to go for the rebrand.
I love it. Walk me through the new chain. How is it better than Fantom? I mean, in doing research for the show, your tech capabilities are absolutely absurd. The TPS is just stupidly high, which we love to see. Walk me through the new chain, what type of projects it's built for. Are you guys going towards a specific niche? Is it going to be, DeFi? Is it going to be RWA, blah, blah, blah? Walk me through that whole game plan there.
Yeah, sure. So just to talk more about the technology first, the first part of your question, I want to go into like super technical detail, but essentially what we've done is we've optimized what's called block processing or transaction processing. So when you submit a transaction to the network, there's a whole bunch of different processes that occur, right? You have to, you interact with a smart contract, for example, you've got like certain transaction that executes, right? Or certain series of instructions that need to be executed. So those instructions get sent to nodes, and then they run what's called like a virtual machine that executes those sequence of instructions, right? And then those instructions get converted to what we call like bytecode. And that bytecode is what gets stored on the actual blockchain, right? It's basically a way of like compressing data to make it very easy to store and to minimize costs, and it's an efficient way of doing stuff, right? And so what we've done at Sonic is to basically optimize that process. So there's two main ways that we've optimized that process. One was basically creating a new database ourselves that's very optimized for handling blockchain related data. And the other way is that we've built our own virtual machine that is essentially an optimized version of the Ethereum virtual machine, or the virtual machine that's most commonly used to execute smart contracts. And so we implemented a variety of different ideas that are well known in virtual machine construction, such as what are known as supersets and other things, basically just making it much more efficient to be able to execute smart contracts and transactions. And in terms of the database side, we've created a database that can store data in an even more efficient manner than other traditional databases that are out there that are commonly used by other chains in Ethereum itself, and require a lot less data to store. It's a lot faster to kind of go through the data and do what are known as read and writes, which is basically like reading data from the chain or writing data to the chain, which is essentially what occurs in most transactions that are submitted on the network. And because we've optimized that, it means that fundamentally in the end, we get faster transactions, right? So confirmation times go lower, or what we call time to finality. Transaction throughput goes higher as well because more transactions can be submitted and processed in a given amount of time. And that is what leads to scalability. What we're also doing in the future now is, well, we've also optimized how the consensus works to some extent and communication between nodes, but also going forward into the future in 2025, we're actually building an entirely new consensus. And that will also dramatically increase the speed of Sonic. And that will also contain what we call formal verification, or basically having mathematically proved certain properties of the consensus, which again, just like adds another layer of security. Now to your second question about what we want to focus on in terms of narrative or branding, I think the big area or the big type of like applications that we want to focus on is related to DeFi. I think that's just historically what our strength has been, what the narrative has been. Obviously in 21, Fantom was known as a DeFi chain, with Andre involved, with just the way that it developed as well in terms of the most popular applications that were built on Fantom were very early DeFi applications. And obviously we had like a tremendous amount of TVL. The TVL, I think, peaked at more than $10 billion. We were, I think, at some points, the second most popular chain in terms of DeFi, just behind Ethereum itself. And I think that's a narrative and position that we can reclaim again. And so a lot of our projects that we're talking to are mainly DeFi-related applications across all sorts of types of DeFi applications. So, lending and borrowing, perp dexes, normal, typical like Uniswap style dexes, etc. Or like the sort of like standard DeFi applications that you see on other chains are definitely coming to Sonic. And there's some very well-known applications that are looking to deploy on Sonic soon after it's launched. And there are also newer applications out there that I think have a lot of potential that can do really well on Sonic. That's the narrative that we're going for now into the future. I think it's a very good narrative. I think it plays to our strengths, especially with Andre's involvement. And I think we can get really big, mainly focusing on DeFi, but also making it clear that the chain is available for any sort of application that needs high throughput and scalability. So, for example, games that repeatedly need to submit a large number of transactions to the network would also benefit very much from the Sonic technology.
I love it. Wow. Michael, what a rip. We got to take a quick break here and give a huge shout out. When we get back, we're going to talk about some of the ecosystem partnerships that you guys already have locked up, and Sonic Boom, the $200 million S token airdrop to spur the adoption of the network. Can't wait to get into that. Until then, huge shout out to Prime XBT, longtime friends of CryptoNews.com and longtime sponsors of the Crypto News podcast. We love Prime XBT as they offer a robust trading system for both beginners and professional traders. It doesn't matter if you're a rookie or a vet. You can easily design and customize your layouts and widgets to best fit your trading style. Prime XBT is also offering exclusive promo for listeners of the Crypto News podcast. Use the promo code CryptoNews50, that is CryptoNews50, all one word, to receive 50% of your deposit credited to your trading account. Again, that is CryptoNews50, all one word, to receive 50% of your deposit credited to your trading account. Let's keep this train going here. Let's keep the Sonic train going. Upcoming launch of Mainnet. Again, I know there might be a specific date in mind. I do believe it's in a couple months. I'd love if you could talk to me about what you guys have sort of learned through Testnet. I have a bit of a weird fetish, is perhaps the wrong word, but I've been fortunate enough to work with some really incredible teams, and being part of the team while working on Testnet and then going to Mainnet. A lot of crazy shit that happens behind the scenes that the average Joe and Josephine really has no clue about, like the hours that go into it, the rigorous tests, all the nonsense. You learn so much. I'd love if you could tell a couple stories in regards to what you guys learned on Testnet, and talk a little bit about the upcoming Sonic Mainnet launch as well.
Yeah, sure. So as I mentioned, the Sonic Testnet is planned to be launched before the end of the year. Actually, I just got confirmation earlier today that we're on track for the first week of December launch, which is absolutely fantastic. Yeah, to get to the position that we are in right now, where we're getting very close to the mainnet, required a lot of testing. So a lot of the work is actually related to testing. So in fact, the Sonic technology is all fully developed. The L1 is developed, the Sonic bridge or gateway is developed as well. A lot of it is just a matter of like optimizing and testing now. So when we started off with the developing of the Sonic technology, which is a bit more than 2 years ago, the first question we wanted to answer is, okay, empirically, what are the areas that we need to optimize, right? Like what is taking the most time when it comes to processing transactions on the network? And it turns out that a lot of the processing time is related to the database. and then to a smaller extent, the virtual machine. So we discovered that about 85% of the time is spent on the database, reading and writing data, and the other 13% is related to the execution of the transaction itself with what's known as a virtual machine. And 2% was kind of like miscellaneous, a few other stuff that we don't really need to get into. So it was mainly like the database and the virtual machine. And so as a result of that, we spend a lot of time firstly on the database, optimizing that and designing a new solution. And then secondly, on optimizing the virtual machine. And so a lot of it comes down to what we call performance engineering testing, right? It's identifying where the bottleneck is. It's designing solution for that bottleneck. It's testing out that solution, optimizing that solution. And, sometimes you design a solution that is not very good or doesn't optimize as much. And then you sort of just like keep repeating the process, right? Until you get a solution that is very optimal and safe and well tested. And that's basically the sort of process that we've been following for the 2+ years working on the new Sonic technology. And then when it comes to the testnet is very helpful because it allows you to, first of all, demonstrate the technology that you developed and also be able to test it with real live people interacting with it and as a complete system. So we launched like a first earlier testnet towards the end of October last year. And we recently launched like a new testnet using the latest technology about a month ago or so. And that's been really helpful because one is being able to get the message out. And we had, for example, like a really nice article come out from Cointelegraph saying that this is like the fastest finality at the moment. It takes like 700 milliseconds or zero 0.7 seconds to confirm a transaction on the network. That, it looks very promising, looks very interesting. There's a good narrative around it. So that's like some positive press that we got and some excitement as well. And also it was very useful for the developers because they could see that, as a complete system, their technology was working really well and that there were like a couple of issues here and there identified that have been able to work on and will be, fixed for the mainnet. So that's sort of the journey that we've had at the moment. And in terms of the new gateway that we're creating, this bridge, which I guess we can get into more technical detail a little bit later and features as to why it's useful and why we're developing it. But essentially, we built a lot of that technology ourselves. And then just recently on Monday or the end of last week, we prepared all the documentation and sent that to the auditors. So, we've sent the code to 3 separate auditors and documentation. Hopefully, within the next month or month and a half, they'll be able to complete that audit. It comes back fine, or if there's minor issues, we can get that fixed. And then we'll have that ready for the mainnet launch, which is planned right now for the 1st of December, before the end of the year. So a lot of it comes down to testing, iteration, seeing if something works, seeing if something doesn't work. And it's very much like empirically driven, I would say, is the work that we've done. So we're very confident that, this technology is going to work really, really well, exactly as we think it will.
I love that. Michael, you also got to talk to us about the incredible partnerships that you guys have locked and loaded: Chainlink, Alchemy, Rabi Wallets, tons more. I'm just naming a couple here. You don't need to discuss individually, but maybe just talk about the bigger picture of these partnerships, what exactly the goal is to partner with these incredible companies and sort of the longer term scope and goal of Sonic.
Yeah, so I said earlier in the podcast that I'm a lot of motivation for launching, the new chain and the new branding was to kind of like learn from the mistakes in the past, right? And do more of the right stuff that didn't really exist on the existing chain, right? And so when it comes to a lot of these partnerships, we've always talking from a perspective of, okay, what does a developer want or what does a user want, right? And a lot of feedback that we gathered in the past were about, we need certain things, right? Like we need a native stablecoin. We need to have Chainlink and CCIP. We need to have all these like other features as a developer because my application, uses them. And if I don't have access to those features on the particular chain, it's going to be very difficult for me to deploy on that chain. And so we took all of that feedback as to like what developers told us they want. And now we're delivering on, what they want for the new chain. So for example, we've got Gnosis Safe that we announced a few weeks ago. That is a big feature that a lot of people said that they wanted. We had our own solution, but having the Gnosis Safe solution is just so much better. It's just much easier to work with, and it's much more compatible with people's applications. So that's one feature, for example, one application that we're going to have on the new network that we didn't have on the previous network. We also announced like a whole bunch of Chainlink new additional feeds and CCIP, which is the cross-chain interoperability protocol. This is a feature that didn't exist on Fantom as well, that a lot of developers said that they wanted. And also there's native stablecoin stuff that's coming on around that I can't give many details right now, but that's something that that's also been a top priority for us. And so a lot of these partnerships that we're announcing, infrastructure partnerships, are really a reaction to developers' feedback saying, this is what we want to deploy. And so we are giving them what they want. We're delivering on what developers need so they can launch on Sonic.
Hey, speaking of developers, you guys have a new initiative called Sonic Boom, a $200 million S airdrop to spur the adoption of the network. You got to tell us a little bit more about this, but quick question. Is it 200 million S tokens or 200 million USD in S tokens? I did a bit of research. I couldn't find exactly what is good there.
So it's 200 million in S tokens itself. So it's denominated in the S token.
Love it. Nice. And could tell us a little bit more about that. Is that just, classic, want to get the devs on board, going to throw a shitload of tokens at them to incentivize them, come build. We have everything, that you could ever want in a chain. What's the purpose of this?
Yeah. So ultimately just taking a step back, the ultimate goal of us as a business, right? And I think it's probably a similar thing for other chains that are out there, is that we're in the business of selling computing power, right? We're in the business of selling the ability to process transactions and to be able to save the results on a chain, right? So we're selling, computing power to confirm transactions and also the storage as well associated with it, right? In other words, when you submit a transaction, say on Ethereum or Fantom, you're paying a gas fee, right? And the gas fee is related to how much computation you use in your transaction. That's the business model. And so the ideal situation that we want to get into eventually is that you have it's a fee generation model, right? You have a lot of developers on board who build popular applications that users on the network want to use, which means that they're submitting a lot of transactions on the network, but individually are low-cost transactions, but in aggregate are significant transaction fees. And then those transaction fees can be used to pay the developers, they can be used to pay the validators that validate the transactions. And that's the real sustainable model that we want to get to. It's a fee generation model. But in order to get there, you need to have a lot of users and you need to have a lot of developers. And so if you're signing up with a new chain, and obviously you're starting from zero users, zero developers when you just launch a new chain by definition, because the chain is just getting started, you need to have the incentives in there for the developers to join the network and to build popular applications. And I think just having great technology obviously is very, very important for developers, because obviously if the technology doesn't work, if it's not scalable, no developer will be able to scale their application on your chain. But that in itself is not compelling enough when we think about it closely. And so what we said is that, okay, what we need to do is we also need to have, business development incentives and marketing incentives to want to launch on the new chain. So, you have the technology incentives, but then you also have the builder incentives as well. And so for the airdrop program, the 200 million S token is really geared towards that, because what that is designed to do is to basically support a lot of users from joining the network by basically being incentivized to do it by using applications that they want to use on the network. And developers are incentivized to deploy in the new network because they know that their users are going to be incentivized to use their applications. And so there's the ability for them to generate a lot of users very, very fast. So essentially the airdrop program and a few other grants programs that we have are essentially subsidies, temporary subsidies to help the network grow tremendously. And so, we put this to the token holders. We held governance vote. There was an overwhelming amount of support for it. And, there's a whole structure about how over the next 5 or 6 years, there's going to be, distributions of the airdrop. There's going to be distributions of grant as well to really help people launch and develop on Sonic.
Michael, this is an absolute treat here, my friend. We are getting a little tight for time. One thing you got to talk to us about is the bridge, the gateway. This is absolutely massive. Interoperability, cross-chain communication, it needs to happen if we want to go mainstream. You and the team are working on this. Tell me exactly what is good with this incredible bridge that you guys have.
Yeah, so the new bridge is going to have a lot of interesting features that other bridges don't have. And it's about, people being able to bridge securely and fastly onto the Sonic network. So obviously there's a lot of assets that are sitting in particular on Ethereum. and we want them to be moved over to Sonic as part of the DeFi ecosystem. So that's the big motivation about it. And we want to do it having learned lessons from the past by creating our own like decentralized bridge or gateway, as we call it, and having in particular features that I think a lot of users are going to find very useful. So essentially, for example, if you want to bridge from Ethereum to Sonic, right? You say you want to bridge one token. When you use the bridge, what happens is that after your bridge transaction has gone through successfully, you generate what's known as a proof of receipt on the original chain, right? Or in this case, a proof of receipt on Ethereum. In the unlikely event that the bridge were to go down or that the Sonic network were to go down for whatever reason, after 14 days, you would be able to retrieve your assets completely on the chain that you bridge from. In this example, Ethereum. And we're able to do this in a very decentralized manner where the validators that participate in the consensus for the Sonic network are the same validators that participate in the confirmation of the new gateway. That means that there's no, single sign control. There's no like multi-sig controlled by the foundation where we have absolute control and we can do whatever we want. No. All the transactions are confirmed by the same validator set that we have for the Sonic L1, which should be a similar validator set that we have for the current chain. And so having this fail-safe mechanism, I think, just adds another layer of security where, as long as you have like the proof on the original chain and you have control of your wallet, that you will be able to get your tokens back in the end in the event that anything's happened. And that to us has been a big motivator from, what we experienced before in the past, like with multi-chain and with other bridges that are out there that is fail-safe. I think it really makes it a lot more secure to want to use the bridge. Another important feature about it is the frequency and the cost of bridging to and from. And so it only takes 10 minutes to go from Ethereum to Sonic and 1 hour to go from Sonic to Ethereum. It's a lot faster than other bridges that are out there. For example, with optimistic rollups, it can take 7 days to go from the L2 to the L1. In our case, from Sonic to Ethereum, it's up to an hour. And when I say up to an hour, what I mean is that at regular intervals, like every hour or every 10 minutes, if you're going from Ethereum to Sonic, the whole bunch of transactions get confirmed and the proofs are written to the chain that you bridge from, right? However, there's also going to be another feature called a fast lane feature, where if you want to confirm your transaction faster than 10 minutes or up to an hour, then you can basically pay an extra fee for that transaction to be confirmed. And your transaction, all the other transactions that are pending, will get confirmed at the same time. And the cost for doing this sort of fast transaction isn't that much more. It's only an additional, I think, $2.50 we anticipate it to be. And so this bridging solution is already a lot faster, a lot cheaper, and I think more secure with the fail-safe mechanisms that I talked about than other solutions that are out there. And this is something that's designed specifically for the Sonic technology and should make it a lot easier and more comfortable for people to bridge a lot of assets onto the Sonic network. So that sort of is the overview of the gateway and how it can benefit users.
I love that. Really appreciate your time here as always, my friend. Always incredibly insightful and big fans of you guys and what you're doing. Before you let us go, Michael, can you please let us know where listeners can find you personally, of course, and Sonic online and on socials?
So to follow the latest updates, we're very active on X, obviously, as a lot of people in the industry are. So you can follow me at Michael F. Kong. You can follow the Sonic account at 0x Sonic Labs. So at 0x Sonic Labs, we push out the latest updates on X. We're very active. We post, several times a day, at least on average. And then you can also go to our website, soniclabs.com, that has the latest info as we get to the mainnet launch.
I love it. Appreciate your time, my friend. As always, everything will be included in the show notes. Can't wait to have you on for round 3 and can't wait to snag some S tokens myself. But as always, absolute pleasure and treat having you on, and we'll see you on the next one.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. Thanks again.
Folks, what an episode with Michael Kong, CEO of Sonic. What an episode. Huge shout out to Mike and the team for making this happen. Folks, we touched everything Sonic related, the rebrand from Fantom to Sonic, the upcoming launch of Sonic Mainnet, and a little bit of the bridge to ETH, cross-chain communication, interoperability, DeFi applications within the Sonic ecosystem partnerships, you name it. Huge shout out again to everyone involved for making this happen. Listeners, if you guys enjoyed this one, And I hope you did. Please do subscribe to this pod. It would mean the world to my team and I. Speaking of the team, love you guys. Thank you so much for everything, especially you, Stas. You're the man as always. And back to the listeners. Love you guys. Keep on growing those bags and keep on staying healthy, wealthy, and happy. Bye for now, and we'll see you on the next one. Ciao.